quickly see what we did last time. I believed we created a new user model with Mongoose. So this code right here, where our properties are going to be an email and a password. And MongoDB Atlas on the right side of the screen. If we look at our database, we see we still have one user here, one user document saved. Mongoose is connected to MongoDB Atlas. So how did we connect this cloud MongoDB to our Express server? And it's this code right here. And yeah, now we're able to store an email and a hash password. Okay, so I see an error definitely from day 2. This is a plain text password, so big security no-no. So we'll change that right now. Postman, we can still send requests right here. Oops. Let me maximize this. There we go. So I don't click by accident. Okay, yeah. So this is going to be in our user's router code right here. So we're hashing our password, and that's nice. But I'm just using req.body which is coming in as this, where that plain text password is coming from. So instead of that, let me go ahead and clear out our bad user. And I can do that in 2 ways. I can delete the whole collection, or I can just X them out right here, I believe. Yeah, and this might be easier. So refresh, and there should be nothing there. Yeah, good. Okay, so now we're fresh again. So I'm not going to use req.body because it'll be the same as what the client is sending us. I'm instead going to have email, which I know is coming from req.body.email. That's still fine. But then the other property of password, I want to be now this hashed password. So let's go ahead and try to run that new code and see what happens. And we got to run our server, node-mon app. All right, let's go ahead and send this request one more time. I'm going to expand Postman a little bit so I can see that send. Yep, and then it disappeared. All right, that should be good enough to hit send. All right, I click send, and we see that now we're getting back this MongoDB document from the database. Email is looking good, and hash password is looking good. So that's exactly what we want. So we corrected this step, definitely, to not be a plain text password offender. So let's look at our next objective. Modify req.user and add email and user ID. So here's the interesting thing, kind of. There's 2 ways we could go about this. When the client is registering, a lot of websites, they'll be like, go ahead and click on an email to confirm. or some other process they need to do before they're like technically logged in. Or maybe they just register, but then you still need to click on login and then enter your credentials. On our site, I was thinking that maybe we could just save them that step and register them, quote unquote, register them right away. But it's really how you want to design your app, kind of. But let's go ahead and now that they're existing in the database, let's do the step of like actually logging them in. And by logging them in at the end of the day, well, there's a couple things I want to do. But the first step to kind of logging them in is creating a req.user property on our req object, so that later middlewares can know the user that's logged in. So let's work on that. So going back to our route, I'm going to not respond. Response on user. I'm not going to, I'm going to not respond right away. Instead, I'm going to console.log req.user and see what exists right now in that property. So this is going to hang when I click send because it's still waiting for a response that never appears. Okay, and so we're getting an error right here, duplicate key error collection from our email, because we had set email to be unique. So here I'm going to just say maxdhs2@gmail.com to not get that error. Yeah. Send this request again. It hangs. That's fine. But what we're after is this console.log of req.user, which is undefined, which actually is good in our case. So I want to basically say req.user equals the user that's returned from this process. And then we can console.log req.user and see if that did anything for us. So technically in our database, that last request was probably uploaded to our database. But we never properly responded to the client, and that's fine. We'll have some junk in there that we'll end up clearing out probably. But first, I just want to see that I can successfully add a user property to our req object. So let's try maxdhs3. Click send. And nice. So now we're console.logging req.user and we get all this good information. And it might be overkill to have ID, email, and password depending on what we need. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as that. And maybe we'll come back and trim that up later. Because maybe necessarily we don't need all that. And if we don't need all that, it's always a good idea to not have it. A lot of kind of programming concepts are about limiting yourself as the developer from accessing like especially global variables, but any information you don't need to keep it lean. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. So req.user we successfully created and added the good information that was returned from MongoDB. And now I think we're probably good to return user to the client. Let me check the README, see if there's anything else technically I wanted to do. Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm glad I checked. So we did this successfully. Req.user is now quote unquote logged in. But I still want to generate a JWT. And this brings us into the arena of discussing JWTs. So let's go back to our users router. So here, before I respond, I want to generate a JWT. So let's go ahead and look up JWTs. Yeah, npm. Really broadly, what is the point of a token? Basically, we, as the backend developer, can issue out a token to a client. And if they re-present it to us, we can decode that token and know that it was issued by us and it's authentic. And we can store their user ID in there and then know exactly who that user is from our database. So here's the situation, right? The client initially logs in and they send that email and password just in plain text when they're registering or when they're logging in. But the server we're building, Express server, is considered stateless. Every request, it has no information from the request that preceded it. So yeah, there's no data that's being saved. So every time the user needs to present a token, so it's like, remember me, I'm this user. So that's kind of the overall approach to using tokens. And the beauty of tokens is that we can use many different front ends. So we could have maybe a React Native front end mobile app or a traditional React desktop app, just web app, or really anything. Like tokens are the most versatile. So we're really like future proofing our application. And we'll have to wire this up in the front end as well when we build out the React front end. It'll be really interesting to see how this works. But for now, our job is to generate a token and send that to the client so that they later on can do whatever they need to do to store it. So for that, we're going to use JSON Web Tokens. So we'll shut down our running app and install it. And then we'll check out this package. So we'll follow along with this. And for this, I think we will synchronously sign it because it's pretty quick. I think I've always synchronously signed the tokens and it hasn't been a problem. Okay, so let's bring this in. Const JWT, acquire JWT. And I'm going to run our app again. And we got an error. Can't find module JWT because it's not JWT, it's JSON Web Token. Run this again and our terminal is clean. So we have our user information, right? And now I want to make a token with that information so that I can send it to the client. So I want jwt.sign. If I put it in parentheses, I see that VS Code is hinting me that it needs something called a payload with a string. So this is the actual information that is relevant about the user that you want to store. So in our case, we can store the user ID, and I'm going to call it _ID because that's by convention what Mongoose kind of uses. So I'm going to mirror that. But if we need to tweak that, we can come back to later. And then, so where is their ID is the question, right? So right now, that ID is being stored in two places. It's either in req.user _ID. If we look at the console.log from before, we can see that. So we could use it there. That'd be fine. Or we could use it directly from here. Either way is totally fine. We'll go ahead and use it from req.user. Yeah, we'll go ahead and use it from there. Okay, so that's like the only information I want to store in the token. Because the beauty of the token is you don't even need to send out the password. Because when you decrypt it eventually, when the user sends a request to a secure route and we have to decrypt the token, if we decrypt it and JWT tells us it's authentic, we don't even need their password. We know that token and that user are legit. So the next thing that I need is a secret or a private key. And this is any string that you want to use to kind of sign these tokens that we know it's unique to us. And I'm going to actually store this token in a .env file. I think it's time that we actually, or should we do that when we're tweaking some other security stuff later on? Because yeah, maybe we'll go back, because right now in app.js we have this, so I don't want to get too derailed. So we'll keep this very unsecure, and then we'll go ahead and secure it later on. I think is how we'll do it, so that you can see kind of the naked bare bones right now. So here, this literally can be any weird string that you want. And then I actually think we only need those two options. And we can test this out. We can say token equals that whole thing. And then we can try to console.log the token and see if we're good. But really the part we care about is this, it's called the payload. That's really the meat of what we're interested in. All right, I think that's good. Let me go ahead and check this out. And our database is running, so I'll go ahead and send a post with a new username so we don't get that error. Click send. And this hangs, of course, because we're not responding, so it's forever waiting. But this is beautiful right here. This is our token. And the really strange part about tokens is they're just encoded. They're not encrypted. So I'll show you the difference right now. Anyone in the world can access the information that's stored in here. So if we go to JWT, this is the website of the people who make the technology for the package we're using. Let me open this up. So if we paste in our actual token that we just created, we can see right here our user ID. And this actually matches with I believe it's this one, right? FC0 is the last three. Yeah, FC0. So anyone on the internet, if they have this token, can decode it without doing anything, without knowing our secret. The trick is, though, if they want to know that it's authentic and verified, the signature, because right now this isn't, the signature isn't verified. So if they submit it, our JWT package would be able to tell us that it's not authentic, unless they have okay, so sorry, erase that. So if they copy this exact code and send it to us, we actually do know it's authentic because this part is our signature. And if we decode it and we provide our this crazy plain text key or secret, then we know it's authentic. But only we have this information. So only we can determine if it's authentic or not. But anyone can have the information. I know that's a little tricky, but it's how tokens function, and it's kind of the beauty of them. So never store a password in a token. Really just store the ID. I don't think there's anything else you need, but every app is different, I'm sure. But definitely never store a password. All right, so we successfully created a token, and now we just want to respond with that token. And for good measure, we might want to respond with the user too. I think eventually in our front-end app, we'll want both of those things. I know in some apps I've created, I've wanted both. So we'll go ahead and respond with both right now. And this is just shorthand for the ES6 version of this. Just if you haven't seen that shortcut before. All right, let's save this and then send a request again and make sure it's all good. If we send this request, we'll get an error. So I'm going to change the username. I'm sorry, the email. And nice, we got a nice response with our user information and the token. So now when we're building the React on the front end, I don't know why I said now, eventually, we'll be able to use all this good information to know that our client is logged in. So we generated a JWT and we responded to the client with the token. Let me check that the chat is working today. I remember from yesterday that it wasn't, and it was annoying. So let me check that out right now. Give me 1 second, sorry. I'm still totally new to streaming on YouTube. I don't see it, which is definitely annoying. But it says we're good on my streamer. So I'm going to assume it's telling me the truth. But I guess I'll figure it out later. Super annoying. Okay. So cool. Let's work on, oh, so we get a big check. We did all these objectives for users/register. So let's start working on logging in, which we're really going to repeat these steps pretty much. But we'll work on that route specifically. So here, we might, you know what, we probably could just copy this code. It's going to be so similar. Let's go ahead and do that. So here, when they send the client sends a post request to login, we don't need to hash a password. We don't need to create a user. We don't need to add a property to req.user. And we don't need to sign a token. So this is getting way slimmer. But we do know we do need to take a token that was provided to us and decode it. So let's take this token right here and emulate that a client was sending us this request. So let's pretend that they were sending us a request that looked like this with their token. And if you can imagine a React front end sending a post request, maybe with fetch, and in the stringify, JSON.stringify, and they would send this, and that's how they would actually get that done. But we'll do that for real in our front end portion. So, okay, so how do we access this token? This token is going to be stored in req.body.json. So let's go ahead and console.log that out, make sure we're good. I'm sorry, not req.body, just req.body.token. And I want to log this. All right, so let's try that right now. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking this request might not be, might not be in the body. It might not be the best place for it. Let me see if this works first of all, but then we might move this. Sorry. Okay, so we change our path to user/login. And we do a send, and we see it right here. So let's see if we move our token. Let's see if we have our token stored in authorization and bearer token. And we put our token there. Will that automatically set a req.headers.authorization? Let's check that out. I think it might. No, it says undefined. Quest.header.authorization. I know there's a way that this is traditionally stored in the header. Let me try to look it up. JWT token request header. But where is it stored? Like, how does Postman send that header? Maybe we can check it out here in headers. Oh, authorization. There we go. But why isn't it clicked? Oh, it was clicked. So there's, oh, is it just, no, so I just need to pluralize this, req.headers, I think. And then we should be good. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. So better than the body, to emulate this, the client is likely going to send this in the req.headers.authorization. That's where it's by convention sent. So we're going to emulate that properly. So we get rid of it from the body. We don't need that. And in Postman, we set it in authorization, bearer token, and then right there. And then automatically, Postman is going to set this header with authorization. When we click send, we can then access it. Did this refresh? I didn't watch. So let me click send again, and we can access it in req.headers.authorization. Okay. So next step is to know if this is a authentic token, because somebody could have possibly taken it and manipulated it. So we got to check out if it's legit. So let's go to, sorry about this. Put this screen back. Okay, so let's go to JSON Web Token and see how to confirm this, basically. There's how to sign it, more stuff of how to sign it. Importantly, we didn't discuss, we can set it to expire in a day, in a month, or never. I don't know what it does by default, which is kind of interesting. So default expiration. Expires in, okay, so milliseconds are used by default, but what's the default if you don't? Okay, there are no default values. So this will never expire in theory, the token we're creating. And your app will be entirely up to you and how you determine that. If you're like a bank account, you're going to expire in like, I don't know, an hour probably. But if you're a forum and there's no sensitive data or something, in our case, we'll probably never have it expire. It's probably fine. Okay, so that's good information, but how do we verify our token? Okay, so jwt.verify. But is there a good example of this? Yeah. So we want something like this, right? So I'm going to, this is going to return, I believe, a true or false value, like a Boolean of true or false, I believe. So we'll say is verified to equal jwt dot verify, and then the token we want. So where's the token being stored after all that trouble? It was in req.headers.authorization. And our second argument is our secret secret key or string that we use. So in this case, it's this that we created for ourselves. And again, this is bad security practice, but we're going to fix it later on. And then let's console.log is verified. Oh my God, I'm doing this in the, shoot. I'm doing this in the wrong route. I'm in register. I want to delete all that code. And then here's where I want this. So jwt.verify, req.headers.authorization is our token. And then our secret string is this. And this will return to us, hopefully, a Boolean of true or false. So is this token verified? And we can get rid of this line right here. All right, moment of truth. I need a little bit more space to click send. And we get an error, invalid token. Invalid token. So jwt.verify. It was request.headers.authorization, right? Check that out again. And we signed it with that string. That should be exactly the same. All right, let me send this again. Here's our token. Maybe the problem is that we have to split this first because it has the word bearer and then that space. That might be screwing it up. I thought maybe JWT can extract it automatically for us, but maybe not. JWT verify postman request. Let's check it out. I just want to see the verify function. So let's search for it. 0. How is that possible? So header, they added it to authorization. Nice. So that's exactly how we have it. I think that's the same. see if there's a different example. But I think that's the problem. I think we have to get rid of that bear JWT postman bearer token. So yeah, I've always used Passport in the past, but I wanted to do this manually myself. So, but here's what's tricking us up right here. We need to get rid of that bearer. But I was hoping that JWT would decode the string. JWT bearer. But I guess it doesn't. Okay, we can manually do it, and then, yeah, we can manually do it. That's fine. So here, I want const token to be equal to req.headers.authorization, but then I want to split it at that space, because if you remember from the console what it looked like, it looks like this right here. So if we split it at the space and then we use index 1, we should be good. But let's console.log that. And then instead of req.headers authorization, we'll just put in token. And that maybe will be good. But I was hoping there's a cleaner way to do that. And I'm sure there is. All right, so it does not return to us a Boolean of true or false. It returns to us the actual payload, which totally makes sense. So this isn't going to be isMatch. This is going to be user. Yeah, this is going to be user, and specifically the user ID, and then we can just respond to our client with that information, with the payload from our decoded token. So send this request again, and here they're sending us the token. We're responding with their ID. Yeah. And then potentially in the front end side of things, we can then store locally maybe this ID so that we can use it. We can use it to look them up on subsequent requests. Because in this situation, when they're logging in, well, actually, when they registered, we sent them both the user and the token, which was good for them to have, right? But in this situation, they're sending us the token. So they already have that token stored in their front end client. So all we need to give them back is their user. But in addition to that, we need to also set req.user equals user so that subsequent middlewares can have that information. But these two things should match. So I'm actually going to limit req.user. I'm just going to make req.user ID, in the interest of these two things being the same, I'm going to not, remember we talked about up here how maybe you shouldn't give the user everything. I'm just going to give them the .id property. Yeah. And then down here, I'm going to respond with just their ID. And I don't like jumping around a little bit, so we'll check both these in detail to make sure we're still good. But I want them to, I want our front end to have consistency, to know what it's going to expect. That'll be important for when we're developing React. So let me test this out. Let me respond with both. Let me respond with both the user ID, which is in user._ID, I believe. We'll look at it. And I also, well, they already have the token, so they don't actually need that, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's check this out again. This is the situation where they're logging in with this valid token that they're sending us. And now we're just giving this object with just their user ID. And of course, we're attaching a request object with that property so that our backend can also know. There's like two concerns, you know, there's the backend that's knowing that the user's logged in, and there's the front end keeping track too. So user auth can get kind of crazy, but that's looking good. And then in our register route, let's make sure that's still working. So change this to register, get rid of the auth, and in the body, we have to emulate a client request with, I don't know, max 4, is it up to? Maybe 5 at gmail.com. And then password, just 123. So this might be rejected if we use the username already, but let's see that this is still working. So cannot read property of undefined type error. Try catch users.user. All right, it's not helpful because it's not telling us what's undefined. But let's look through this code for a second. So hash password, await bcrypt.hash req.body.password. That should be good. User equals await user.create email, and we have that. That should both be good. But we can test it out with a console.log to make sure. Oh, so is it going to be, it's going to be this. No, that line should be good. It's token. Let me console.log all these different things to see where we're going wrong. So user request.user ID token. Let's try all those. Save this. And we'll do max, oops. Email. Okay, we'll send this again. And we still get that error. Okay, so here is more helpful. It says cannot read property ID of undefined. Oh, okay, yeah. So my error is right here. I said req.user, but now this is actually just either user._ID or, yeah, let's just use that. user._ID. All right, and we send this again and duplicate key for email, which is good. Our validation is working correctly. Send this again. And we got a successful request. And this console.logged, the user, request.user, and token all are looking good. And most importantly, it responded to our client with the information they need. So we can delete this line. And we'll return to this because we're going to have to make it more secure. But that's where I'm going to end it for this day. And yeah, we're logged in, so we got to check. Oh, so I don't need this objective because we have now I'm getting a little confused. Let me relook at this route. I need to rework this route. This was my confusion. For the login, this code is going to be great for like an authorization when they already have a token. So we can actually use this code and set it aside and call it like for later. Oops. But we're actually, different logic is going to be for the login. This is assuming that the user already has a token. And the login is the situation where they don't have a login. They're just submitting the plain email and password. So my bad. We're going to have to rework that logic. So let me uncheck this. Yeah, let me uncheck that. And yeah, we'll work on that next time. It shouldn't be too bad. And we can still use the code we wrote, just in a different place. All right, sorry for the mistake there, but hope you enjoyed it a little bit. I'll see you next time.